Nobby Clark, your wonderful career in photography spans 6 decades.
My God.
Can you tell us where and how your first big break came along?
It was 1968, 69. I was working in my dad's pub in Pimlico, and the National Youth Theatre offices were in Eccleston Square, and they used to come in the pub. And I was taking a lot of photographs around London and friends and families, so I was trying to get into the business. And I asked them, I'd love to do some rehearsal photographs. So they said, yeah, sure. Michael Croft, who was started in the National Youth Theatre, I had to go and see him, you know, and he never called me Nobby. Always called me, my real name, not many people know it, is Peter. So he always called me Peter, and he said, oh, Peter, I'd love you to photograph Zigga Zagga, because it was a famous play by Peter Turson. They'd done it the year before. And I said, oh, that's great. And I said, Michael, is there any money involved in it? And he went, oh, and he always spoke like this, oh, Peter, no money, no money. So that was my sort of break.
Where were the pictures published? Were they published anywhere?
Yeah, well, Time Out had just started, and I was told about this, so, you know, so I started, you know, sent them into Time Out, and they liked them, and they sort of published them, you know, and I used to get a £5 for a picture, which was fantastic. I persevered with that, and then I got involved with Fringe Theatre. I love the Fringe, and the Bush Theatre in Shepherd's Bush. I went there and I started taking photographs of them, and they liked me. So that was an ongoing job.
But you were also starting to look at the music scene in the 70s, weren't you?
Well,
I've seen pictures from Springsteen.
Yeah, yeah.
And the Rolling Stones 76, the big European tour.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what that happened was because the production manager of the National Youth Theatre had his own company, and he was the Stones especially was 1976, and he was their production manager in America. Okay. And they hadn't played England for 3 years, and luckily enough, I got passes for, you know, 1 gig and 3 numbers, and then you're thrown out.
So that's all you got. They were on at where was it?
Earl's Court.
Earl's Court.
Yeah.
6 nights.
Yeah, yeah.
But you got 1 day.
Yeah, 1 day. Yeah.
And 3 numbers.
Well, as I was put into the pit by Mick Jagger's, because I was actually thrown out just before they came on by the producer, who sort of didn't like me, and I was covered in passes, and Edwin Shirley, the great trucking guy who was trucking them, said, well, Nobby's got all the passes and all that, and he just, flowery language, get out. So as I'm walking out, thinking that it's about to come on, and Jagger had a security guy who knew me, and he said, where are you going, Nob? I said, I've just been thrown out. He said, no, you haven't. And he picked me up and threw me in the pit.
And then I've seen pictures taken from the audience, I think, where you went back and did the general views of the stage and everything. Yeah, because out of that small piece of work, a book came.
Yeah.
So there was clearly plenty of pictures taken in what, a couple of hours then, really?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you just, you know, I mean, it's all, you know, film, and mainly black and white, but I had a camera with some colour in it as well.
You certainly did. There's some super colour as well. Yeah. It wasn't the first time you'd been thrown out, was it? Did you not have a problem with Springsteen as well?
Yeah, same sort of thing. Well, I think of that era was that they liked throwing photographers out. Because I wasn't a rock photographer. I was there as a photographer. I liked rock music. And I didn't do loads of bands and stuff like that. You know, I didn't.
Yeah, right. And as you mentioned, your pictures were being published in Time Out and other places, but you attracted the attention of some of the Sunday papers, didn't you? And the Observer in particular liked your style, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my style was that I didn't really know. You know, I'm not a great technician, so you know, I overdeveloped and overexposed. And I remember one of the printers at the Observer said, "We love your stuff, Nobby, because it's just black and white." So yeah, so I mean, they like me, and Gary Woodhouse, the picture editor, sort of like my work, and you know, sometimes they give me an odd job, and
one of those odd jobs. I want you to tell us about the story about Sir Laurence Olivier's 70th birthday.
Yeah, that was it. It was a Saturday, and they sort of give, you know, are you free? I said yeah, and they said, well, it's Laurence Olivier's 70th birthday, and I'm not very good at knocking on doors, because they couldn't get in touch with him. wonder what I do, you know, I don't know what I do. I know, I'll go and buy a bunch of flowers. So I bought a bunch of flowers, went to the door, knocked on the door was open. And somebody came to the door and I said, I'm Nobby Clark from New Turbo, we want to photograph Lawrence Olivier on his birthday. And I've bought him a bunch of flowers. Would he, you know, he came to the door. She said he's coming, and he came to the door and he said to me, he said, you're a naughty, naughty boy, but I love flowers on my birthday. Come and take my photograph. So amazing. It was a great, so I took
wonderful,
the photo, and it made front page that Sunday. So
great
that
stuff.
was.
And in the late 1970s, you went off to Liverpool, just for the day probably, to the Empire Theatre.
Yeah, Liverpool,
to see a Scottish comedian musician that probably not many people had heard of at the time.
Well, Billy Connolly. Yeah, I was 79 and I was sent down to Liverpool, you know, and like photograph Billy Connolly. Oh yeah, great, you know. So I turned up at, he just allowed me to take photographs. There was no...
And that was the start of a very long and
yeah, well,
lovely relationship.
he seemed to, because he allowed me to take a load of pictures in the dressing room, and I did the gig, and he said, and I sent him some prints to Steve, and they seemed to like me, and it became I worked for, you know, I did work for him over like 20 years, you know.
And that developed beyond photography, although you would still take pictures on this particular job. You directed his World Tour of Australia television show.
Yeah, well, it was, but that came out about because he'd done the World Tour of Scotland, and I did a bit of editing on it from some stand-up. I did some more. Right. And they said, would you like to go to Australia for 4 months to do the World Tour of Australia? So that's how that came about.
And so you directed that television series, as it turned out.
Yeah.
But you were still taking snaps while you were
on that
job.
I took a load of photographs, you know, on the street, and also Billy on his trike. You know. So you know.
And not all of your jobs have been bed of roses. You went to Romania to photograph an orphanage in the late 80s. I mean, that must have been really hard.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, because I've never been to war. You know, I've never done. I suppose hard news, you know, I've done sort of, you know, demos and all that, but I've never, you know, photographed wars or anything like that. But Steve Brown, it was Olivia Harrison, George Harrison's wife, had started the charity, and Steve Brown knew them all, looking for a photographer, and he said, would you go, you know? So there was 3 of us, Olivia, assistant and me, and we went off to Romania. It was unbelievable, you know, because these... some of them have been in a cot since they were born, you know, and they were 5 and 6.
Cool.
It was just, I mean, and then we got into the Victor Babesh Hospital in Budapest, if I've got the name right, in the AIDS ward. And there was, we were with the famous Italian doctor who went in, and I'd never seen the guy so angry, you know, and I went in. And I've never, you know, the photograph is that these babies in these dirty cots and stuff like that. I mean, it's just...
Well, you showed the world what it was like.
Well, unfortunately, I came back and nobody wanted to use them. So it was just, it was very... I mean, I showed them to one picture editor, and he said, oh, have you seen these before? And I said, yeah, but you haven't seen mine, have you?
But going back to the theatre, James Earl Jones was playing Paul Robeson, and you got an amazing photograph. It's sort of a double exposure.
Yeah. Well, that was, you know, I went to photograph him at... it was at the...
very clever.
Well, yeah, but it was a mistake.
Oh,
the camera jammed.
Oh, okay.
So actually, I mean,
right.
I didn't do any tricks or anything like that. You know, I've got the neg, and the neg has got this double, you know, him, and it's double, and he was with a bust, so it's a double image.
Remarkable photograph.
So there's a bust of him, of Paul Robeson in the photograph.
Let's talk a little bit about your association with Andrew Lloyd Webber and some of the shows that he was involved with.
Well, I did the Starlight Express, was the big show on roller skates, with John Napier, the great designer, and Richard Stilgo did the music and lyrics, and a producer phoned me out of the blue and said, you know, we just want something different. And that was the meeting.
And you delivered that with a lot of motion in your pictures.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
slow shutter speeds and that kind of thing.
I shot on Nikon. I had a zoom lens, and I decided to, because you could actually shoot. They had a lot of rehearsals, and also you could shoot in the previews before the. So I used to put it on a slow shutter speed and zoom backwards and forwards.
Yeah. So Nobby, the company would have been rehearsing for a few weeks. At what point would you come in and start to photograph and document what they're doing?
When you become production photographer, you normally start on the first day because everybody meets each other.
Okay.
And they would even start rehearsing on the first day.
Yeah.
And then I would come back and maybe 2 or 3 days rehearsals, which were used in the program and for publicity. Yeah. And then the dress rehearsal is they normally do one rehearsal for a play, and I go in and shoot that. I mean, it can be quite heavy in rehearsal rooms, you know. It's
you got to know when to stand back and let them get on with it. Yeah. And then when you can, step forward and take a picture. Yeah. Yeah. And so we haven't talked about Sir Peter Hall and your work with him. Well,
that started was, I was working for the RSC. I had a book. I've been doing photo calls at the Old Vic before they moved. And then the opening production was Albert Finney and Tamburlaine the Great. And I really wanted to do it, because I knew the press people at the National. So I never met Peter Hall then. I showed my book and I got I did the opening production of Tamburlaine with Albert Finney. So that was...
and many more things with Sir Peter.
Yeah, and over the years, I worked with him right up until he sadly got ill and died. But I mean, I'm not all shows, but there was shows that he liked me and I got on with him and we could have a chat. Yeah.
There was a particular portrait that I really love, Nobby, of Sir Ian McKellen and Francesca Annis, and in fact you've done more than one portrait of the two of them together. But the one from 1976 when Romeo and Juliet,
that's
I think. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then, of course, mustn't forget, you did them again in 2021.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, I mean, that was I was doing Romeo and Juliet at Stratford, and I've done rehearsals. I was doing rehearsals, and I thought I had a studio in Smithfield Market, and I just thought it'd be really nice to do some portraits. And so I got in touch with the press thing, and Ian and Francesca said, yeah, fine. So I did some portraits in at the studio, black and white and some colour, which is really great. I mean, it looks like they're naked, but
it's a medium format shot.
Yeah, 2 1/4.
Yeah.
And they were great, and they got used in the programme.
Yeah.
And then 2021, they're doing a play down at Theatre Royal Windsor, and I thought it'd be really nice to do them again. Was it how many years on? Yeah. So I went down to the thing, and we did it in the bar. So there was no light yet again. It was a real panic and stuff like that. So I did a set of pictures, black and white and a colour, and
wonderful,
so juxtaposition.
But it shows how long you've been in the business, let alone how long they've been in the business, and how those relationships developed.
Yeah. I mean, they were up for it, and.
Yeah, so Nobby, you mentioned you'd done some work at the Old Vic with the Old Vic Theatre Company, and you went to China with them.
Yeah. I mean, I heard that the company was on tour. They were doing a big world tour, and I thought I'd really like to go to China, So, and they were up for it, but I just had to get people backing me to go.
Okay. And how long a period were you there?
I was. I think I must have been. Fortnight? Yeah. And China was like 79, it was fantastic, we were going all around, and I took loads of street photographs. And
we talk about Bill Bryden, your relationship with Bill, you did a book with him as well?
Yeah, I mean, because I did a hell of a lot of work at the National, and Bill Bryden had got this company called the Cottesloe, in the Cottesloe Theatre, and they put on wonderful shows, and they did The Mysteries was one of their sort of thing, where they had Mark McManus as Christ. They did it outside, and they crucified him outside on a cross outside the. So it's a great picture of Mark being crucified outside the National Theatre.
We mustn't be too London-centric here, because you travelled the country doing,
Oh yeah,
doing
I've
stuff,
worked in
north,
most
south,
of the,
east and west.
Yeah, I've worked in most of the theatre in all round. You know, I'm sort of Barry Rutter started the Northern Broadside Theatre Company, and he asked me to do it, and he was getting like, you know, northern actors, and I said, you know, but I'm a Cockney, you know, you want me to come? And he said, yeah, well, I'll make you an honorary Northerner.
So, Nobby, do you have favourite photographs that you don't necessarily tell people about normally, but you keep them in your head? Do you have favourites that you think, oh, that was all right?
Yeah, I've got. Well, I've got a lovely photograph of Dave Allen standing at Fairfield Hill, Croydon, just standing just before he went on the show. That's a great picture.
And Barry Humphries, you've got some great backstage stuff of him in his dressing room.
Yeah, well, that was a newspaper sent me to do. He was at the Piccadilly Theatre, and we went down to the dressing room in the Piccadilly, and it was a real dingy, you know, it looked like a toilet. And he allowed me to take photographs, and he stripped off to the waist, and he just put the Dame Edna glasses in the dressing room mirror. So I took, you know, I'm thinking, this is the picture, you know.
You also photographed Don McCullin. And
I had a photograph of him in Bloomsbury, and I'd gone for it, and he's a very good-looking bloke. And I arrived there, and there was a little square there, and I was standing on the curb, and the traffic was going by. He said, "Be careful, Nobby, be careful." You know, he's always aware of everything. And there was just a bench, and he sat down and stuff like that. And I'd done some portraits of him, colour and black and white. And then as he sat down, he did that. Split second, like a hardly ever been used. But you know, that's the picture. I just thought I can die happy.
Wonderful.
You know, I mean, that's what every photographer, you know, that's wonderful. That moment that you treasure, you know.
Yeah.
But funny enough, it didn't get used.
Nobby Clark, it's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.